Good evening, everyone. If anyone would like to come and take a seat, there are a few left at the front. I just wanted to extend a really warm welcome to everybody to the Jameel Arts Centre and to the Bouquet and the Wreath, the first major show of works from the last 45 years by Araya, who's here with us tonight. I think it's very special for us to have the work of an artist that has been so groundbreaking and so highly influential in Thailand and around Asia, and to be able to showcase your works here is really, really special for us. So thank you so much. I wanted to thank you for being here with us tonight in Dubai as well, and everyone will have a chance to meet Araya after the talk too. So this exhibition is a collaboration with Mayam, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chiang Mai in Thailand. And it's something, rather than being a touring show, it's a show that happens in two places simultaneously. So quite a feat to pull off in terms of production and curation. We'd really like to thank Eric Booth and also Jean-Michel Birdsley from Mayam and their entire team as well. I'd also like to thank lenders to the exhibition. We have some works that Araya hasn't seen for many decades as well, that have been in institutional collections around the world and brought here together for the first time tonight. In particular, 100 Tonson Foundation, the Silpakorn University, where you were an alumni of the university, and National Gallery Singapore for some really important historical loans as well. Another thanks also to Pressworks, who are publishers of the upcoming monograph on Araya's practice, which will be available soon. And last but not least, our guest curators, Kittima and Roger. Where is it? Yeah, Kittima, thank you. We're missing Roger tonight, but we'll have a message from him later. But I know that both of you have absolutely championed Araya and her practice and this exhibition and brought it to us with a really beautiful collaboration between us and Thailand. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to an Art Jameel friend, an artist, Hussein Nassereddine, who's here with us tonight, who's going to kick off an evening of talks and discussion with a reading and interpretation of one of Araya's key texts. Hussein is an artist living and working between Beirut and Paris, and currently an artist in residence at Al Sakal Arts Foundation, so hopefully we'll see a bit more of you around Dubai at the moment. And I think your most recent solo show was at the Beirut Arts Centre in Beirut, but also an artist that's been very involved with us here at the Jameel. So thank you so much, Hussein. I'll hand over to you.
Since becoming an artist, the setting up of the Bouquet and the Wreath has enabled me to observe the curatorial process more than any other show in which I have participated. I accept this like a present towards my approaching 70s, which is bringing different tastes of moments such as surprise, anxiety, suspicion, and insomnia. It also brings gloomy, beautiful interpretations of surrounding landscapes and the strange flavors of favorite dishes. This is the first time for me as an artist to see and feel the curator's roles parallel with or more than my own works. It's like shifting my perspective from simply viewing flowers to embracing the elements of growth: water, sunlight, soil, and care. But concerning later aspects of the exhibition, the romance of this metaphor is innocent of my later knowledge of lack of fertilizer. In other words, the budget, the money. The poetic combined with the pragmatic, each of them intangible in their own ways. My curiosity towards the intangible used to enable me to absorb its varied possibilities with confidence and ease. 2 years ago, when Roger Nelson first proposed the idea of exhibiting the Bouquet and the Wreath, it was like the Chao Phraya River, Thailand's main river, flowing steadily and calmly along a quiet rural bank in summer, taking my mind off the changing seasons. It was hard to imagine that an idea's moment and the following process of connecting between two museums that evoked such a peaceful scene would transform into one in which the Thai Prachum Plong would be reached, the time when both production and installation was in Kittima Chareeprasit's hands, just 1.5 months before the opening of the first part of the exhibition in Mayam Contemporary Museum in Thailand. Prachum Plung in Thai means meeting of all fires, and is used for the moment when all fires cooperate in burning a dead body in a funeral. Not only the real fire to burn the carcass, but in the imagination of all participants at the funeral. This is the moment where a rush and acceleration of the firecrackers mean the urgent sending of the spirit of the dead to heaven, no matter whether that person, when he or she was still alive, did good and or bad karma, more or less throughout their lives. The Prachum Plong moment is always in the afternoon around 2 to 3 p.m. The temple and crematorium of the district is perhaps 3 kilometers from my house, but the firecracker sound expands over 4 to 5 villages. While the spirit of the dead is floating high to reach heaven, most of my dogs, who never know they have spirit, are close to becoming unconscious. They are shaking, panting, and insanely running around our extravagant oval grass field. When I wrote these sentences, I wondered how similar Jameel's experience of installing the work might have been. Now, from my experience from the middle of this year, I conclude that the noise and chaos of a local funeral can be compared to the process of production and installing an art museum. The decomposition of the body by cremation and the formation of art in the form of an exhibition share this uncanny resemblance of chaotic, frenetic atmosphere. Referring to the exhibition in Mayam, an aspect of it that shocked me was seeing myself in 4 or 5 videos. Am I a narcissist, as featured in these different occasions? Not only my body outside, but also inside my body. Through an operation on my back, the video is revealing, slow and lingering, of blood, fat, and bones. Why did one girl who was thought to be a good daughter, who was a gentle female student in a girls' boarding school, and had been taught under the traditional teachings from the College of Art that art was a good and noble thing, all the time living in the harmony surrounding the past of Thai culture under Buddhism, then chanced to appear in relationship with dead bodies and crippled dogs, confronting the sea storm and hearing stories told by insane women? Would it be too easy to assume that more normal surroundings could not have sufficiently brought her to a state of being herself? I guess, from my recent perspective on the world and its various contexts, that the appearance of my body's image in artworks is my way of rejecting superficial, popular characteristics of the mass. My popping my head out to breathe from the defined frame with its stereotypical and situational constraints. In support of this comment, one of the main characters in my novel, Born to Bid Farewell, commits suicide on June 24th, known as the Day of the Siamese Revolution, which marks Thailand's transition from an absolute monarchy to a democratic system of governance. Throughout several decades of political conflict, June 24 is often referred to by later generations of politicians and artists. However, the reason that the main character named Lailia commits suicide concerns the death of one small crippled stray dog. She is here in the form of a little sculpture, and her name is Nunil. The question is whether such intensity of content is enough to go against the frame of the masses, if, within such culture and circumstance, there is still enough air to breathe. In my novel, the death of a tiny disabled stray dog is a cause of the main character named Laylia's decision to commit suicide. The short scene description of before Laylia's death, her last act, where she sits and writes to finish her short story on June 24, one's writing and one's death on the day of the Siamese Revolution, could be interpreted as the dilution of meaning of being mass by being very individual in art and literature. Could this be a way of exploring some of the works here in Jameel? Can 3 art installations work together with Laylia's condition as an overflowing of sympathy, morbid romanticism, mourning, and nostalgia? At this point, I'm also beginning to be curious about the artworks in this show. If, in a sense, the artworks can themselves choose to react to this new situation in Jameel. Are they reacting as innocently and instinctively as dogs, or as works of art that never worry, like the artist, or as humans? Is the assumption behind this last question strong enough to be real? Does the aspect of time of the work during the time I grew up, I found an old picture so sweet change as some 30 years pass by? Does the work still need to seek refuge in 2 of its old components, the portraits of a deceased grandmother and a deceased mother? The same can be asked of the girl's bed in the same work. Does it still live under the pressure of her mother's funeral image that hangs above her cold bed? How does the sympathy of the moment that those girls in Departure of Country Thai Girls who travel abroad from their birthplace to sell their bodies and maybe their souls, with their thought Pai Thai Dapna, meaning to go to take risk somewhere in some situation, how does it compare to Laylia's decision to step away from life with a broken heart due to the death of Nunil? How much does the word sympathy distort one's ability to be happy and maybe distort the ability to create? Could the lady in Buang now be stronger than before, as her severed body still lies in a wooden stretcher amidst positioned objects such as burnt branches leaning against the wall and rocks and hanging logs? Is her solitary response to the conditions around her changing through time, while art people still need the old artwork to be preserved just as it was? Meanwhile, are we ourselves in such a state of flux that we hear the roosters continually crowing in our adulthood, and not just in the early morning when we as children thought that the rooster wanted to wake us up? And then there is that the golden shower tree does not bloom only in the summer anymore, but also in August and even in autumn. Does Laylia's death make her stronger in the reveries of her next life? But supposing we throw out the overly sensitive questions and look at each thing and each situation in its ordinary form. Funeral flowers and scattered soil in one's wooden cradle, which could have been a coffin, or maybe just ritualistic objects, are now art objects. But don't let them make you cry. It's like the photographed image of your mother's funeral, which could be the only record of short memory on that day that you were too innocent, sitting among your relatives, both dead and alive. أزهار الجنازة وذاك التراب المتبعثر في الصندوق الخشبي والذي كان من الممكن أن يكون تابوتا هي ربما أشياء للجنازة، لكنها الآن أشياء للفن. لكننا لن نبكي، إنها مثل تلك الصورة في جنازة الأم، والتي لعلها الشاهد الوحيد على تلك الذكرى العابرة في ذاك اليوم حين كنا أبرياء نجلس مع الأقرباء الأموات منهم والأحياء. Those country tigers, after having traveled abroad, can send some money home to build a house and learn to speak a second language. And the scene of the last moment that Laila writes her short story is, after all, the only obvious instance of mood of the novel. The comparison of the metaphor of the flowing river through villages, quiet riverbanks, and the situation of Prat Shumplung, or the meeting of fires, to the two curators' role could just be the artifice of this written speech. Also, I would need to underline that the moment my dogs, being close to unconscious, happened while hearing the loud sound of firecrackers from the local funeral in the village is a real moment. I might want to write a speech that is as slow as gently scratching my dog's ear or patting its fur all over. But the meaning of the word speech does have its own power. The word is already shaped by the way we perceive it, even as we are, in a sense, playing with text. Finally, I would like to sincerely thank everyone involved for allowing my work to be exhibited today with the graceful patience of a major organizer, which I really respect. But I will reveal one truth before the end. The family members of Dog's palatial house told me without hesitation that they weren't happy that the organizers of the exhibition had made me travel far and left them at home amidst the firecrackers noise of the Loy Krathong festival in this first week of November. When I asked my dogs if they felt ashamed to demand this for themselves, and they didn't answer this question, I assumed that they simply do not feel the shame, same as humans. They just yawn a little when they feel embarrassed by being loved or teased.
Thank you very much, Hussein, for that very gentle reading and interpretation of Araya's text. And thank you, Araya, for that very delicate text. You've opened up the evening for us in a very warm and beautiful way. Now I'd like to introduce the show's curators, Kittima Chareeprasit and Roger Nelson. Kittima is Chief Curator at Mayam Contemporary Art Museum in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And Roger Nelson is an art historian, curator, assistant professor of art history at the School of Humanities at Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. Unfortunately, Roger is not able to be with us here in person today, but he has kindly sent us all a video message that we will share with you shortly. After which Kittima will be joined in conversation with our very own Lucas Morin, curator at Art Jameel. So please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
That I'm not there with you in person today. After 2 years of working on this exhibition, it really breaks my heart that a last-minute illness has prevented me from traveling to be there. But I'd like to really thank all of you for your presence, joining together in celebrating this exhibition. I'd like to thank the wonderful team at Jameel Art Centre, so many people, Nora, Lucas, Giacomo, Dina, and many, many others besides. I'd like to thank my co-curator, the incredible and tireless Kittima Chareeprasit, for all you've done over the last 2 weeks, but also over the last 2 years and more. And of course, most importantly, I'd like to thank Araya Rasdjarmrearnsook the artist who has inspired and taught me, challenged me and provoked me and nourished me so much, not just over the last 2 years of working on this exhibition, but for much longer than that as well. Her practice has been a constant guide and companion for my own thinking over many years, and I've learned so much along the way. Thank you for your patience and your generosity and all your inspiration, Ajahn. I'm sure you're all keen to see the exhibition, so I thought I'd just share a couple of thoughts about the curatorial process and what I've learned along the way. The first thing is that we've decided to take a rather unconventional approach to the structure of this exhibition. It surveys 45 plus years of Araya's practice, but it does so in a way that's non-chronological. Right from the very first room of the exhibition, you'll see Araya's most recent works right up alongside her earlier artworks. This creates a kind of conversation across time and space between the earlier works and the more recent works. And that's a conversation that we also enter into, bringing our own subjectivity, our own feelings and moods and thoughts and backgrounds and experiences to complicate and enlarge that encounter with the artworks. Putting this show together, we were very conscious that we'd be introducing Araya's practice to many of you for the first time. Of course, art lovers may have seen her works, as she's been shown at most of the world's most significant biennales over the last decades. But while you may have seen her work here and there at Venice or Documenta or elsewhere, this is the first time that so many of Araya's works from across time have been brought together in a large-scale retrospective. We wanted to avoid presenting a single linear narrative of Araya's practice, which after all continues and continues to evolve. And instead, we wanted to invite you to find your own connections between works across different times, made in different media. We wanted to invite you to notice different motifs that recur across artworks made in different forms and different periods, to notice different questions and concerns that come up again and again in Araya's practice. As well as being non-chronological, we also wanted to weave writing throughout this exhibition. Almost every single artwork is accompanied by a label in which you can read from Araya's writing about the work and about her practice. In Thailand, Araya is equally well known as a writer as she is as an artist, and we wanted her practice as a writer to be present alongside her practice as an artist. As you see the exhibition and encounter the artworks, you'll be accompanied by Araya's voice, her voice as a writer, mingling with her presence as an artist. The third thing to say about the exhibition is that there's a really extraordinary degree to which this exhibition is tied to a very specific place, her home and studio in Chiang Mai in northern Thailand. And you're seeing an image of that on the screen behind me. Surrounding Araya's home, there are many graves, many burial sites for dogs she's lived with and cared for who've passed away. There's many reminders of mortality around her home and studio, just as there's many reminders of death and the fragility of life throughout her practice. But there's also so much exuberant life and liveliness surrounding Araya's home and studio. Not just the 18 dogs running around, keeping her company and vying for her attention, but so many plants, so many trees and flowers growing abundantly, the rice fields that surround her, the mountains that she's alongside. So there's so much death, but also so much liveliness. And there's also so many different scales of time meeting in Araya's home and studio. There's the slowness of the river flowing across the road, the timelessness of the mountain range. But there's also the urgency of annoying curators asking for last-minute requests, or her former students who become her assistants and live and work with her, or the dogs demanding their next meal. All of these different scales of time, as well as all of these different mortality and somber reflections on fragility, and so much liveliness and exuberance, all come together in Araya's home and studio in Chiang Mai, and they're all translated, almost metabolized in her artworks and in the exhibition. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Thank you very much.
It's It's very hard to come right after Hussein's very moving interpretation of Araya's text. I'm kind of moved by everything I've seen today. And I'm really sad Roger is not here, but that means you get to answer every question I ask. I wanted to ask you first about flowers. I mean, we've talked a lot about dogs already. We've seen pictures of dogs, and we'll get back to them. But I wanted to ask you about the very title of the exhibition, The Bouquet and the Wreath, which is two different flower arrangements, right? Can you tell us where the name came from, how it was coined, and also if there were any differences between the original title in Thai and the English one that we selected?
Asking about this question, like it's very recalled to the first email when we discussed as well with Araya, since she's also what we would say she's a master of language. She can use Thai language like more than fluently, and she giving a sense of like the original title in Thai, Chaw Mala, which translated into bouquet and wreath. Bouquet and wreath, which is a flower. One of her emails, she says, this is also giving her to remember about the past. You told us that a lot of females were named after flower, and not like this anymore in Thailand, which is a flower meaning for like sense of female. However, flower in our exhibition, the bouquet and wreath, can be interpreted into two different ways, as is reflected in Araya artistic practice, which have a lot of duality. In her practice of Araya, she's always have something, as Roger referred to, something of like talking about date and life. Flower as well. Flower could be something that you give it to someone that you love, as a symbolic of someone that you care when you're giving a flower to. You can also give a flower to showing your sorrow and sadness, as like the flower showing in the wreath in the funeral. So these two interpretations reflecting on like duality of work of Araya, which will recurring throughout the exhibition if we walk through together after in the show.
And now I'm gonna go back to dogs.
Okay.
Because I mean, if you enter the Jameel Art Center from this side, you've already been greeted actually by one of the first works of the exhibition, which are those two dogs. And if you haven't seen the show yet, but I think you could see from the video that we had from Mayam, those sculptures of dogs are absolutely everywhere. And something that really struck me, and I didn't think would affect me so much, is that when I saw the show with the works installed a few days ago, I saw it before the dogs were set up around the space. And it was, you know, very nice, but a very kind of conventional show with one work after another. And once the dogs were installed, my perception of the exhibition space changed entirely. And I realized something, that I was not necessarily looking at the dogs as sculptures, but because the dogs were looking at artwork, I was looking at the works with them. And that changed completely my perspective and my understanding of the show. Can you tell me if it was the intended effect or if I'm completely nuts? Or in particular, how you chose to place the dogs throughout the exhibition? How did that come to be one of the main features of the show?
Refer to the video that Lucas mentioned before, as I think it's like the latest Araya work is called Dog Art Tour. So when we finished the exhibition in Mayam, at Mayam we allow dogs as well to enter the exhibition if the owner have leash, or like if it's small dog, they can carry dog around the exhibition to see the tour. So after we open less than a week, Araya says that I will bring my dog to do a tour. So she brings like selected behaved dog, I would say, or her favorite dog to the exhibition together. And like as you see in the video, they're kind of like walking together to see the artwork, and they also see themselves as well. These sculptures, as like we produced 12 dog sculptures, which is like Araya real dog. both live, both alive and dead, and each of them was kind of like special moment for artist herself as she record to them through the pictures, and it's not just like the dog sculpture, but it's her memory with them as well that is present in these dog sculptures. And as you see for Araya herself, dog is not just like a company, it's her family, is part of her life, is intertwined, and it cannot be separate between life, art, and dog for the artist. Lucas here giving a really good example on his shirt. He wearing the family T-shirt. This is a merge when Araya exhibit her work at Documenta 13, and she had this Documenta work, which is a family portrait of her and her first batch of dogs. And that how you see that is like really entwined in her practice. And to have it in the exhibition is this work have to also mention that is a collaboration and co-commission between Mayam and Jameel. So it's one of the series that we developing together, and it was the first conversation that when we talking to Jameel that we should definitely have them in both of the show. The show is not traveling show, so it's like the show in two parts, which means that we have to set up dogs in both places to activate the space, to accompany yourself as well. The dog at my may be familiar to the audience, maybe something that is everyday, but on the first time when we decide visit in March this year, we saw like we try to looking at like the street whether like can we find the dog, and we also see some of like dog owner running dog around across this bank as well. And I feel like, well, it's something extraordinary, and if as a curator thought that if we could have a dog to welcome the audience or welcome a traveler at the first of the entrance here, what would be perception or like what would be audience reaction as well? And to have it across the exhibition, it's just not like have it there as a prop of the exhibition, but it's like the one that accompany you, it lead toward you, it suggests you to look at the artwork together with them. There might be a dog that look at art, and that be the dog that look at the emptiness of the space as well, and that's the nature of life, I think.
I need to say, we don't have stray dogs around, but we have a lot of stray cats, including some that were just running behind us during the performance. And they keep trying to come in, so they'll be super jealous of Araya's dogs. You mentioned very rightfully that it's not a touring exhibition, but an exhibition in two parts, where the two exhibitions happen nearly at the same time. How did that work for you curatorially? How did you choose which works would go in which location, which works would be shown in both locations? How did that process go?
I think Roger has briefly mentioned about the curatorial process as well, and idea behind our selection of work and idea of thought. Araya has been practiced for more than 45 years, and her practice is various. It's just not like how could we show her or present her not just as a contemporary artist. She also a writer. She also a great teacher. I actually was study with her once in my undergraduate. I don't think she remembered me, but yeah. Also, like how could we presenting on this aspect of her practice in the show was something that we have to count on as well. Araya is actually first exhibit internationally in 1981, not in a group show, but I don't think she been like she known in the West, but not. I don't think she known much in this size of the world, and UAE or the Arab world. So for us, when we knew that we want to do the show with Jameel, it's also how could we introduce her to the audience as well, and in what expect that it can be rounded as it's not a conclusion, it's not a finalize of like everything, but it's more or less a bit of everything to show the taste of her practice. while like in Chiang Mai, you might already also seen in the videos, that also big commission piece from her that for us, we want to show them to like the people that know her very well in Chiang Mai, how energized, like we want to show her, I don't know what is like the best described word of her energy of like someone who been practiced for 45 years and say it many times that she want to retire, but she's still building the biggest sculpture that like 20 people can be inside. So like those energy that she have. So I think we want to show it like different aspect to the audience.
Also, Araya's work is so imbued with literary references, sometimes a lot of very deep and heavy religious and cultural content. Was it also an act of translation to move the exhibition outside of Thailand, to think of an exhibition far away from that context?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we would not think of if we exhibit it in like Southeast Asia context. That will be like with the audience more familiar culturally and contextually as well. So with here, there's a lot of things, and I thankfully for Jameel to and especially you, Lucas, for being able to like discuss with us and guide us through as well of with like which aspect that we could be translated to work to fit in with like the international audience. Her work has been in different series, has been exhibited widely across like globe as well. But to specifically translate into this context, I think it's like also the difficulty of like which level that we could translate her work.
I actually appreciate that every now and then we didn't translate too much. To not over-determine Araya's work by their context, for instance. We wanted to let also sometimes the works having kind of immediate effect, and I think it worked, even if everyone doesn't, myself included, don't understand so many layers of references, there's still something immediately powerful with so many of her works that sometimes we chose intentionally to not over-explain.
That's true, and also with her, if you ask her about her practice, she will also tell you that I don't need to explain everything to you, right? So it's like she wants you to feel it, and for us as well, for the audience to come to see the exhibition. I think like even though you don't know the background, that like one thing about this show for sure that is really emotional. I would say there's a lot of work that you will feel connection. Like because there's a lot about it is more or less about personal experience, and it's the experience that everyone was like once experienced in life. So that's if this exhibition is more about like to feel, yeah, rather than to understand everything.
To wrap up, I want maybe to hear your personal perspective on working with Araya. When did you start collaborating, and can you tell us a little bit more about what it means to work with Araya, especially in Chiang Mai where you live and work?
She is legend. I would say a lot of her work is legend. Like I never seen her work before. I studied in Chiang Mai University where she taught as well. So I did study like undergraduate. One is like the subject called the composition. I don't know that you remember this, but and then after that, I've been a fan for really long. But then when there's not much like chance to see her work in Thailand, like fully, completely every work. A lot of work that we heard about, but then we don't have art museum back then as well. Last 15 years ago, we only have a museum like later than like just recent 10 years as well. So that's not much of place that show permanent collection of like Thai artists' work as well. So it's really last chance to see Thai artists exhibit like fully solo or like retrospective work. So I've been secret admirer for her practice for really long, and it's I just like told you that yesterday it's popped up on my Facebook notification that last 7 years ago, I make a small event for her. It's on her retirement at like university. She write a novel, Born to Bid Farewell in Thai, and I did a book launch for you in university. Do you remember that? It's 7 years ago, and it's yesterday, and it's really interesting how time flies and how we start to developing kind of like interests. I always have interest in her, but how can I step by step try to understand her practice, try to see a long journey of one artistic practice for more than 45 years. How can I like unscroll this and seeing things? It's been like a really wonderful journey and a lot to learn as well from the artist and like for the curator, from my co-curator. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kittima, for sharing those stories so generously. So before we wrap up, there's going to be a last few words by Noura Razian, who's Deputy Director and Head of Programs here at Art Jameel.
Just a final round of thank yous from me. So thank you so much to our curators, Kittima and Roger. Thank you to Lucas. Thank you to Hussein, of course, and Araya, of course, for your trust and this long journey you've taken with us. From our first call 2 years ago, where Giacomo and myself were speaking to you and Kittima online. It was a very memorable conversation to where we are standing today. I'd just like to thank the Art Jameel team, in particular Giacomo, who was sort of instrumental in pushing everything along and getting us to where we are today, to Zahra, Iman, Yazan, Omar, Brent, Alex, Dina, Chris, Abdul Basit, Qutuf, Jana, and Ines, of course. And before I invite you all to the first floor to see the exhibition, I'd also like to point out tonight we're also opening our new Library Circles display, and this is by Hanina PA. It just opened today, so please have a look. It's right there in the hallway that leads you to the library. We also have a new film screening in Gallery 9 by Bo Wang as well. So please do enjoy this set of exhibitions. Thank you.